Welcome to the show.
Welcome.
Welcome. And it's my new thing. We are going to talk about isolation horror today on the show. If you celebrate Christmas, this is our Christmas episode.
Woohoo!
I think a lot of times people can feel isolated around the holidays, even though existentially, of course, we are all alone all the time
all the
inside
time.
of ourselves.
We are.
But also that can be highlighted at the holidays. And I've always found that isolation horror movies, and even the PG kind, even the kind that aren't really, blood and gore and disgustingness, can just be kind of healing in a way, because you see the isolation that the characters are going through and you don't end up feeling so alone, honestly.
Absolutely. I think that's why they are a favorite for a lot of people, just because the feeling of isolation we have all felt in some way, shape, or form. Like Shannon's saying, whether that's emotionally or at times, look at what happened during COVID.
Yeah.
And isolation horror movies often really get us to face loneliness and abandonment. And we know as mental health folks that why does that make such a good horror film? Because that type of shit leads people to feeling paranoid, suspicious,
Fear, erratic behavior.
fearful. And as human beings, we have a hard time facing our mortality, right? Where like you look at an animal and an animal will accept their fate, their death, their present, right? It's not that they're working for it or living for it. They will protect themselves in the wild and things like that. But when it does come upon them, they accept their fate. Mm-hmm. We have a hard time doing that.
Absolutely.
So isolation I think it does preface, because even in these movies where people are physically isolated, then it's exacerbated by being mentally and emotionally isolated at the same time. We've all felt that.
Absolutely. And profound isolation, which we see in some of these movies, can cause hallucinations and a desperate need for stimulation, which I think is what a lot of us experienced during COVID, acting in ways we wouldn't normally have acted or doing things we wouldn't normally have done. And some of that was profitable and positive, and people made friends with people they wouldn't have necessarily done that because of online and all of that. But a lot of it is, relationships exploded, different things happened in our culture that were very profoundly changing and shifting in the way we acted towards each other. And now we're seeing all of these outcomes of what happened to young people during COVID and their schooling, and being desperate for stimulation means you come out of that drinking and using and having sex and all the things that young people can get really into to manage their own affect. And a lot of that we're seeing as a result of COVID. But today on the show, I noticed we're talking about horror. Isolation horror is definitely one of my favorite subgenres. I have a lot of favorite subgenres, but because I love the isolation that is portrayed in space horror, I love the isolation that is portrayed in cold places. Those are other things. A lot of times it's like out on a boat or in their own home. Sometimes isolation horror could be trapped in your own mind. Like you can really give a lot of lenience to which movies you include in this. So I'll be curious to know what some of the ones Kathy includes in some of her classics, or if there's any new ones or what have you.
The majority of the ones I'm going to talk about are classics, just because I've seen many of these multiple times.
Yeah.
And get something out of them
every time.
And they elicit different feelings every time, depending on when I'm watching them, what time of year I'm watching them, who I'm watching them with. I think that's true of any movie.
Sure.
But isolation horror is essentially all about the atmosphere.
Absolutely. And that's also what I love about it too, because I do love a slow burn with a great payoff. And a lot of times isolation horror is very much internally motivated. So if people are isolated, you'll see a lot of it really excels if the characters are well developed and there's a story along the lines of a character arc. And I think that's when it works the best, because it really is about either one person or a small group of people surviving something together in isolation from the rest of the culture. And, you got to have story and character to be able to make that like in any way interesting. Tell us a couple of your classics that you watch repeatedly for this very reason.
Well, one of the ones I love is Hush, which is a Mike Flanagan.
That's a fucking scary one.
It's really scary. And I watched, it's 2016. Kate Siegel, a deaf and mute writer who retreated into the woods to live a solitary life, must fight for her life in silence when a masked killer appears at her window. John Gallagher Jr. is great in this. I watched this before. Clearly it came out before a lot of Mike Flanagan stuff got big, and so I wasn't really super aware of who he was, and that Kate Siegel was his wife at the time. Like, it wasn't a Mike Flanagan hype thing. I found it on Hulu. I watched it, and I was like, "Oh damn, this is great!" And so this is where, the use of cellular phones and all that really does work, because she is someone who's hearing impaired, and when she's on the phone, the way that she gets her messages is through like a texting service, and she's talking to her sister. So she always has like a screen open, and that in some movies they use technologies just kind of like thrown around, where in this she's noticing things like through the glare of the screen. And then there's all these really creepy camera angles. And John Gallagher Jr. is such an amazing perpetrator in this film. He's really terrifying. But I also love how strong they make her.
Very.
She's so strong in this character. I actually thought, because I didn't know Kate Siegel at the time, I wasn't sure if she was a deaf actor.
Oh, okay.
Because I thought she did this so well.
Sure.
So to this day, when I watch it, it still freaks me out because the intensity.
It's very tense.
It's so tense.
Yeah. Really well made.
And it's her movie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
it's
definitely.
her. The whole movie is her, give or take. I mean, he's wonderful, but the perpetrator in this film really is secondary.
And it's a massively silent film in many ways. I mean, obviously there's a lot of sound and music and noise, and there is some talking at a few points, but yeah.
I love this movie.
Yeah, it came out in the time of the quiet movie, Quiet Place and all that, where we could really, it's just really good. I want to mention the trifecta for me that's like Alien, The Thing, and The Shining.
Sure. Oh yeah, The Thing is great. Yep. So like Shining's on mine too.
Yeah, that those all came out around 79, 80, 82, like The Shining, The Thing, Alien. Those are three movies that I will always watch and rewatch, and they are definitely, two of those are snowy and one is space. So those are great starter movies if you haven't really watched too much horror and you want to look at like different types of isolation and different amounts of isolation, because those are actually little groups of people that are isolated together.
The snowstorms in The Shining.
Oh my God. Amazing.
It doesn't matter how many times I watch that movie. You feel so cold.
I know. It's
and so alone.
It's so scary and
it
so
really
effective. And even though we know awful stories about that movie getting made and how Stephen King feels about it and all the stuff about the director, and all that, whatever. I set all of that aside to watch that movie.
It's a good movie.
And it's really long and all that, but it has these epic moments in it.
They use every corner of that hotel.
So effective. Yeah.
Every corner of that hotel, because when you look at the Overlook, it is massive. And the shots that they take from the outside, and then somehow, because they do these far shots, right? And then you go inside the hotel, that they're hitting everything from the bar to the kitchen walk-in refrigerator, all of these really remote, there's nobody else around. The use of space in this film,
so amazing,
is so incredibly well done.
So well done.
And his performance is great. My brother and I just had a conversation about how we actually prefer him in Cuckoo's Nest.
Love that movie.
I think that's his best role.
Such a good movie.
And he's great in this, but outside of Jack, it's the ambiance.
Yeah.
Of this movie.
That's why it's so slow and so long, is because that obviously it was intentionally made that way because if you know the story at all, the house is a character in this movie. And so that house has the hotel has a lot of airtime. It has a lot of screen time because
makes you feel like you're there.
It's a character. It's a bad guy in this. It's the devil or the demon or the bad guy or the antagonist of this movie, of this story. And so it's really brilliantly done, that part of it.
Yeah. Love. Such a good movie. And Alien and The Thing too. I completely agree. And The Thing is another one that you're just freezing through watching.
Oh my God, you're so cold watching it. That one also has an element of like, it's fun. That it's kind of fun to watch in places because of the creatures and the
and there's multiple
effects and stuff.
People have different opinions on who the Thing really is. And like I it's fun. It's
that one's
really
a little bit lighter.
Yeah.
To me.
This one is not light, but effective, is 2005 British horror film, The Descent.
Yeah, that's a scary ass one too.
This one freaks me out just because you really feel claustrophobic.
The so whole scary. That's a scary fucking movie, guys.
The film follows my computer just went to sleep. The film follows 6 women who enter a cave system and struggle to survive against the humanoid creatures inside. It just gets harder and harder to watch, and the best way is this movie. I remember watching this within the first couple of years that it came out, and it just sucked me right in. And I have some claustrophobia, it's weird. It's random. It's not all the time, but watching this movie, it like I was holding my breath.
Yeah. Yeah. Like a lot of the people in the movie.
Yeah. And then there's this, horror element with these creatures that make it then, really a race for time. But they filmed this, obviously they had to do this in a really clever way because shooting in an actual cave was like super, super dangerous. And so they didn't do that, but they did a really good job at recreating a very realistic set that this movie to this day, it's a hard one. It's tough.
It's really tough. And I agree. It's definitely on my bigger list of isolation horror that is actually terrifying, which is Hush and The Descent are definitely two on that list where I consider rewatching because they're such good movies, and then I usually decide not to because they're like it's a mood.
Yeah.
I need to it's not the comforting isolation horror of something like The Shining or The Thing or Alien. Not. It's not the comforting of the isolation horror. It doesn't match my mood and allow me to feel better. It scares the shit out of me and plays into all the fears around having to fight a overwhelming foe by yourself. So
when Shannon wants a panic attack, she watches this movie.
So if you like that shadow work of being truly alone and fighting the worst thing you've ever come across, then that's the work you would do in those two movies for sure.
For sure.
I want to mention 2 other Stephen King movies because I do believe that in his books and his movies, isolation is isolating people or groups of people are definitely one of the things he addresses. And I always wonder if that's because, he's from Maine and it's fucking cold. And so he's used to being isolated most of the winter, that kind of thing, or just the isolation of being a writer. But The Mist is actually one of my favorite movies of the aughts. For whatever reason, I loved the story back in the day, but the movie's actually very solid. It's also very long, like about 2 hours long, but it's actually very good. And also Misery.
Yeah, Misery is a big one.
So both Misery and The Mist are movies, and The Shining are movies that I will rewatch in the isolation portion of his history. There's other movies of Stephen King's that I'll rewatch for other reasons, but The Mist is honestly one that I'll like throw on a weekend. Kathy often talks about like throwing on horror movies in the background for ambiance. The Mist is one of those ones that I don't have to watch the whole thing. I don't have to like sit and watch every little bit of it, but I will sometimes. But it's about a storm. They all get trapped in this grocery store and there's these bloodthirsty creatures outside. And it's very interesting how the citizens inside of this grocery store manage interpersonally. And I love those kinds of stories,
it's a good movie.
too.
I forgot about that movie.
Yeah, I like it a lot.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to go obvious.
Sure.
If for those of you who have been following the show,
and have made notes about all your favorite things.
No, because I mention it all the time, and it's in the every year, even if you haven't listened to us from the beginning. And I just rewatched it the other night. The 1974 Black Christmas.
Oh yeah, that's a staple for you every year.
Staple for me, and for the same reason that The Shining scares me, the house in this film is used so well. Every room in this house. Someone can be, there can be a party going on down in the living room.
Yeah.
And the attic, there's death happening up there, right?
It's a scary ass movie too.
There's girl comes home. They're all having like a fun Christmas party and partying downstairs. And she just goes up to her bedroom to start packing. And it's the fucking 1974. So it's grainy. The houses are kind of like empty and
scary.
creepy and quiet. And then all of a sudden, she's getting suffocated in her closet while they're all like clinking glasses, and because the house is so big.
So awful.
I love the characters in this. Olivia Hussey's great, but my favorite is Margot Kidder. She's my favorite character.
Oh yeah,
she's the comic relief, and she's the badass
too.
John Saxon's amazing in this, and Andrea Martin, who plays Phil. A lot of people will know her from My Big Fat Greek Wedding. She plays the mother, and she's hilarious. And she's in this much younger, of course, and it's such a great cast. The woman that plays the house mother, she's hilarious. So there is some good comic relief. But my God.
Not once they start the murder, then there's no funny.
And they've redone this movie and it's terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah,
but the
newer version's
original,
awful.
Oh, it's just stupid. It's like a music video.
Well, and this was one of the pioneers of the killer POV, right?
So this movie, Canadians oftentimes will throw some shade, which I get, because John Carpenter's Halloween is supposed to be the first slasher. And these folks are going, we are.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? We're a few years ahead of you. And they're not wrong.
No,
it's
I
just
think
that
they're right.
This is Canadian, so it escapes a lot of the bigger American films, but now has become a huge, cult favorite. So I would say that, yeah, this movie came straight off the Giallo train or assembly line.
Okay,
yeah.
gotcha.
So I'll always love that. This movie will always scare me.
Yeah, it's a great one. I wanted to mention that there's another space horror that I actually really enjoy that's more contemporary that I feel like does a good job, and the name of it's Life. It's from 2017. It's got Jake Gyllenhaal and Ryan Reynolds and a bunch of people in it, and
Love both of them.
it's like not the most amazing movie you've ever seen, but I think it's a lot more solid, and I don't think everyone has seen it. I don't think it's one of those ones that people necessarily think of, but it's definitely like a modern contemporary take on Alien. And it has, I don't know if you guys saw that movie Gravity with Sandra Bullock. It has some elements of that, which was not a horror movie, but very much taps into the horror of being alone. But, like I said, it doesn't excel to the Alien level, and it's not like the best space movie you've ever seen. But it's a very solid watch as far as Isolation is concerned.
I don't know if I've ever seen this, and I love this cast.
Yeah, it's a pretty good one. I would put it on the to watch list. And then the other one I definitely wanted to make sure that I mentioned is the Rec movies. REC. The first one's from 2007. It's found footage. It's basically like, I don't know. I would say it's possibly the best found footage movie ever made, in my opinion. And it's less than 90 minutes. It's a television reporter and a cameraman follow emergency workers into a dark apartment building and are quickly locked inside with something terrifying. If you're not sure if you like found footage and you're not sure you really want to watch it, that's cool, because I don't either, but I do watch a lot more of it than someone who normally says they don't like it.
I know, like every time I turn around, I'm like, Pepper's got you influenced, because I know that you always say that, and then you've watched a bunch.
Well, I have watched a bunch. I do like to explore genres I don't think I like to find the gems, which I realize is weird because I know most people are like, oh, I don't like that, I'm not going to watch it. But I also have a friend named Pepper who's a patron of ours who likes to watch all the found footage. So I often take recommendations from her, but I also watch a lot of trash found footage just because she's like, oh, I want to watch this movie. And I'll be like, okay, I'll watch it with you. And so I get exposed to it. So that helps as well. But Rec is, I would say it's a cut above. Like it's top 3, top 2, top 5, whatever it is. It's a great flick. And it's definitely isolation.
That's cool.
There's some spooky ass shit that happens in that movie.
It's been nominated for quite a bit.
It's really good.
The last one I'll mention that I just find fun is a movie from 2015 called Howl. Mm-hmm. And it's a British horror film as well. And it takes place on a bus. Okay. Or a train. It's really fun because once these werewolves unleash themselves, you really feel like you're trapped on this train. So when passengers on a train are attacked by a creature, they must band together in order to survive until morning. This is just a really fun one. Lots of fantasy, lots of horror, lots of action. Mm-hmm. And it's fast moving and these creatures are fucking rad. And you know, like in any situation like this, people would be like, who are we throwing in front of this guy to die? Yeah. And so you have a train packed full of people. Some are complete idiots and some are actual like survivors that know what they're doing, and I just think it's a fun one.
That's great.
Yeah.
I'll mention the 2006 movie Bug, which I think also doesn't get enough play. It's it's directed by William Friedkin, and it has Ashley Judd and Michael Shannon in it. And it also has Harry Connick Jr. Has a great cast, and I've seen it a few times. It's one of those ones that, like when one used to have cable and you were flipping by the channels, if I saw it, I would watch whatever part was on it because Michael Shannon is frankly fucking amazing in it.
He's amazing.
And if we ever, wanted to do a conversation about psychology in reference to this movie, I'm pretty sure I've mentioned it in other ways on this show. I'm not remembering why, but it's one of my very favorite isolation ones. He's a war veteran and befriends this really lonely woman who played by Ashley Judd, and they kind of hole up in this Oklahoma motel room and begin to have a folie à deux, like a psychosis. And the line between reality and delusion is definitely blurred, and they discover a bug infestation, and it becomes about these bugs, and it's really good. And it's not gross like how you'd think bugs would be. It's not like that.
Like the movie Mosquito?
It's not about bugs.
That was awful.
That was hard. This is not about the bugs. This is actually about the people. You imagine with these heavy hitter actors that it's not going to be about the bugs. It's definitely about them. And it's William Friedkin, directed it.
When you said that, I was like,
really good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's really good. So put that one on your list. I would also put the movie P2 on your list and maybe ATM. I think you and I both saw that.
I liked ATM.
Yeah. So I would put ATM on there as a movie to watch. And I would also put the movie P2, which is a horror thriller, a crime one. It's about a businesswoman who is pursued by a psychopath after being locked in a parking garage on Christmas Eve. So it's a Christmas movie. Merry Christmas. We know it's only a couple of days before Christmas. So this one.
Yeah. And I'd throw PontyPool in there too.
And PontyPool as well.
Oh my God. That one is so effective. And you don't even see a damn zombie for a very long time. It's like Jaws. You don't see the fucking shark.
It's really not about that, right?
It's not.
That becomes the fear outside. But the fear inside and the way that people relate
so effectively,
really good. And all these movies, PontyPool, P2, and Bug. I can't remember when. ATM's much more recent, but those three movies were all made around like 2006, 2007, 2008.
ATM's within the last few years, maybe 19.
Yeah, ATM was it was like just before COVID, I think. Or during COVID, it came out?
2012.
Oh, wow. Okay. So maybe I just watched it.
Yeah, you and I
COVID.
watched it. I almost streamed it for us on Discord the other night, but it wasn't streaming.
Yeah, I watched it during COVID. So I came late to the party.
Yeah,
so I would mention all those. And then I have one more. Do you have any more that you want to mention?
No, I think that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention the movie Dog Soldiers. This is from 2002. And It's like a military horror thriller action movie. And it's in the Scottish wilderness, and it's kind of like a routine military exercise type of movie. And then the shit goes down. And it's a great isolation horror. It's called Dog Soldiers. I'm looking up when it came out. Oh, yeah, I said it already. 2002. It's a really good one. It's an enjoyable horror. It's like, you'll like it. I think most people will like it. So that's another one that I would recommend. So I think we've covered quite a few. I mean, there's endless amounts of these. There's whole subreddits and shit dedicated to isolation horror. It's really something that I think as humans we're fascinated by and also terrified by. So that always lends itself well to horror, right? And it seems like everyone is always trying to explore being isolated among others because that's our natural reality. And even though it might not be a horror movie, I think there's isolation and those kinds of themes in all genres of movies. And so there's just like horror attends to that as well. And so check it out. I know it's the season. It might be very cold where you are. We hope you are having a good holiday season. And if you are alone on this holiday season and you are listening to us, we want you to know that we're here. Reach out to us.
Yeah.
Don't be alone. We're here for you. Chitty chat with us on any of our social medias. Become a patron. Chat with us on Discord, whatever you want. You don't have to be alone, but you can watch isolation horror with us and enjoy it and explore those sides of yourself. And happy holidays, everyone. And I very much hope you enjoyed this episode. This has been an episode of Terror Talk. My name is Shannon.
And I'm Kathy. Sleep safe, everyone.